Why Jesus said deception would be the greatest danger. When the disciples asked Jesus about the end times, he could have started anywhere. He could have started with wars. He could have started with earthquakes. He could have started with the Antichrist. But he didn't. The very first thing out of his mouth was a warning about deception. And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. Take heed that no man deceive you. That's the first danger. Not war, not famine, not persecution, deception. And Jesus expanded on this later in the same discourse. And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. Matthew 24:24. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect, so powerful that even the elect could be deceived if it were possible. Do you understand what Jesus is saying? Before the trumpets blow, before the judgments fall, before the wrath is poured out, the primary danger is deception. False messiahs, false prophets, false signs and wonders, false gospels, false hope. And here's what's sobering. Revelation confirms the pattern. Here's something most people miss when they study Revelation. And this is going to connect everything we've examined about Jesus' warning. And it becomes absolutely crucial for understanding why deception is the gateway danger. When Jesus opens the seals of judgment in Revelation 6, what comes first? Not war, not famine, not death, not cosmic catastrophe. The first seal releases a rider on a white horse. Revelation 6:2. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. A white horse, a crown, going forth conquering. Now, some people see this and think of Christ. After all, Jesus returns on a white horse in Revelation 19. But look more carefully. This rider has a bow, not a sword. He's given a crown, not wearing the many diadems of the true king. He goes forth conquering, but there's no mention of righteousness or judgment. This is a counterfeit, a false peacebringer, a deceptive conqueror who looks like salvation but delivers destruction. And he's the first seal. Before the red horse of war, before the black horse of famine, before the pale horse of death, before the martyrs cry out from under the altar, before the cosmic signs shake the heavens, deception rides first. The pattern Jesus established in Matthew 24 is confirmed in Revelation 6. The sequence is consistent. Deception is the gateway sin of the end times. Everything else flows through it. Everything else depends on whether people recognize it for what it is. But this raises another question, and it's one of the most important questions we can ask. Why does deception work so well? Here's what most people don't understand about deception, and this is going to become absolutely essential when we examine the great apostasy, and it explains why so many sincere people will be fooled. Deception doesn't look like deception. That sounds obvious, but think about what it actually means. Nobody follows something that announces itself as false. Nobody embraces a teacher who says, "I'm here to lead you astray." Nobody joins a movement that openly admits, "We're deceiving you." Deception works precisely because it doesn't look evil. It looks good. It feels right. It sounds spiritual. It promises exactly what people want to hear. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. People follow what feels hopeful. In a world of chaos, uncertainty, and fear, people gravitate toward messages that promise better days ahead, that promise victory, that promise breakthrough, That promise God is about to do something amazing. And there's nothing wrong with hope. Biblical hope is essential, but false hope, the end times deception won't repel people. It will attract them. It won't scare people away. It will draw them in. It won't look like the enemy. It will look like the answer. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Here's something that most prophecy teaching overlooks, and this is going to become absolutely crucial for understanding the strong delusion, and it explains why deception succeeds even among those who should know better. Before the Antichrist rises, before the tribulation fully unfolds, before the mark of the beast becomes mandatory, there's something that must happen first. The great falling away, the apostasy. 1 Timothy 4:1. Now the Spirit speaketh expressly, that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Depart from the faith. Not people who never believed, not outsiders attacking from a distance. People who were in the faith, who identified as believers, who participated in churches, who claimed the name of Christ, departing, giving heed to seducing spirits, being drawn away by spiritual forces that sound compelling but originate in darkness, and doctrines of devils, teachings that come from the pit, dressed in enough religious language to seem legitimate. But here's what Paul says next, and this is going to become essential when we examine why people can no longer receive truth. 2 Timothy 4:3-4. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. Read that carefully. They will not endure sound doctrine, not they won't have access to sound doctrine, not sound doctrine will be hidden from them. They won't endure it. They'll find it uncomfortable, intolerable, too demanding, too confronting, too inconvenient. After their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers. They'll find teachers who tell them what they want to hear. They'll accumulate voices that scratch the itch, that validate what they already wanted to believe. Having itching ears, ears that want to be tickled, ears that crave comfort, not conviction, ears that seek affirmation, not transformation. And here's the core truth that explains the great apostasy. People don't fall away because truth is hidden. They fall away because truth is inconvenient. The departure from faith doesn't happen because the Bible becomes unavailable. It happens because the Bible becomes unacceptable. Its demands are too high. Its standards are too strict. Its call to holiness is too disruptive to the life they want to live. So they find teachers who lower the demands. They find prophets who adjust the standards. But what happens when enough people reject truth? What happens when an entire generation chooses comfort over conviction? That's when something even more terrifying occurs. God Himself acts. And it's not what most people expect. Scene 7. The strong delusion explained. Now we come to one of the most misunderstood passages in all of Scripture. And this is going to connect everything we've examined about deception. And it explains why the end times delusion will be so complete, so total, so inescapable for those caught in it. 2 Thessalonians 2:9-12. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. God shall send them strong delusion. This is the passage that troubles people. It sounds like God tricks people into believing lies, like He stacks the deck against them, like He sets them up to fail. But that's not what's happening. And understanding this is going to become crucial for seeing why the deception is so final. Let me show you the sequence. First, they received not the love of the truth. This is the critical starting point. They were offered truth. Truth was available. Truth was proclaimed. But they didn't receive it. And not just didn't receive it intellectually, they didn't love it. They didn't want it. They preferred their own way. Second, and for this cause, the strong delusion is a response. It's a consequence. It's the result of a choice they already made. God doesn't trick people who are seeking truth. He confirms the direction chosen by people who rejected truth. Third, God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. Once the rejection is complete, once the choice is sealed, God gives them over to what they chose. They wanted lies instead of truth. They'll get lies, and they'll believe them completely. This is the same pattern we see throughout Scripture, and this is going to become essential for understanding why some people are beyond reaching. Romans 1 describes it. 3 times Paul says, God gave them up to uncleanness, gave them up to vile affections, gave them over to a reprobate mind. Not because God wanted them to sin, because they chose sin so persistently, so deliberately, so completely, that God finally confirmed their choice. Pharaoh's heart shows the same pattern. Scripture says both that Pharaoh hardened his own heart and that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. The sequence matters. Pharaoh resisted. Pharaoh refused. Pharaoh rejected. And eventually, God confirmed what Pharaoh had chosen. And here's the warning that should grip every person watching this, because this is the point we've been building toward. Rejected truth eventually becomes unreachable truth. There's a point, and only God knows exactly where it is, where the accumulation of rejection calcifies into permanent resistance, where the heart that kept saying "not yet" becomes the heart that can no longer say "yes." The strong delusion isn't God being cruel, it's God being just. If you persistently, knowingly, willfully reject truth, eventually you lose the capacity to receive it. And that's what makes the end times deception so terrifying. It's not just that false prophets will lie, it's that people will be unable to recognize the lies. They'll believe them completely, sincerely, wholeheartedly, not because they're stupid, but because their capacity for truth has been surrendered through repeated rejection. But here's what makes the final deception even more dangerous. And this connects directly to what we need to examine next. The deception won't just be lies. It will be lies, accompanied by power. Here's what most people expect about the end times deception, and it's dangerously wrong. Most people assume the deception will be obvious, that it will lack power, that it will be exposed by its weakness. But Scripture describes something entirely different. And this is going to become essential for understanding why even believers are at risk. Revelation 13 describes the false prophet, the second beast who promotes the worship of the Antichrist. And look at what he does. Revelation 13:13-14. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. Fire from heaven in the sight of men. Miracles with power. This isn't cheap trickery. This isn't illusion or technology disguised as supernatural. This is genuine power, demonic power, but real power, manifesting in visible, undeniable ways. And that's not all. Revelation 13:3. And I saw one of his heads, as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. A deadly wound healed. The whole world watching. The whole world amazed. The whole world concluding that this power must be divine. Revelation 13:15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. An image that speaks, that has life, that enforces worship on penalty of death. Think about what people will witness. Fire from heaven, like Elijah on Mount Carmel. Miraculous healing, like Jesus and the apostles. Signs and wonders that demand explanation. And here's the critical distinction that every believer must understand, because this is going to become essential for surviving the great deception. Miracles do not equal truth. Power does not equal God's approval. Supernatural demonstrations do not validate the message or the messenger. This is where so many people will stumble. They'll see the power and assume it must be from God. They'll witness the miracles and conclude the message must be true. They'll experience the supernatural and abandon discernment. But Scripture is clear. Satan has power. Demons have power. The false prophet has power. And they will use that power to deceive. The test isn't, did something supernatural happen? The test is, does this align with Scripture? Does this lead to the true Christ? Does this produce genuine holiness? And this connects directly to the danger most people don't see coming. The last deception won't attack atheists. It will target believers. Think about it. Atheists don't follow miracle workers. They don't care about signs and wonders. They're not looking for spiritual power. But believers? We want to see God move. We long for demonstrations of divine power. We're primed to respond to the supernatural. And that makes us the target. The false prophet won't waste time trying to impress skeptics. He'll perform signs that speak to the hunger believers carry. He'll do wonders that look like what we've been praying for. He'll demonstrate power that feels like the revival we've been longing for. And if we can't distinguish true power from false power, true miracles from lying wonders, true revival from counterfeit awakening, we'll follow the deception thinking we're following God. But why is deception so much more dangerous than other threats? Why did Jesus prioritize it above war, famine, and even persecution? The answer reveals something most people have never considered. Here's a comparison that explains everything about why Jesus made deception his first warning. And this is going to become essential for understanding how to survive what's coming. Consider persecution. Throughout history, believers have faced persecution, imprisonment, torture, death, the Roman Empire, the communist regimes, places where following Christ meant risking everything. And what happened to the church under persecution? It grew stronger. The blood of martyrs became the seed of the church. Faith tested by fire emerged purer. Believers who faced death for their conviction emerged with conviction that couldn't be shaken. Persecution clarifies. It forces you to decide what you really believe. It separates the genuine from the superficial. It burns away the nominal and leaves only the committed. You know who the enemy is. You know what you're facing. You know the choice before you. Deny Christ or suffer the consequences. That clarity, as painful as it is actually a gift. But now consider deception. Deception doesn't threaten you from outside. It replaces you from inside. Under persecution, you know you're being attacked. You can resist, you can stand, you can endure. Under deception, you don't know anything is wrong. You think you're following God. You believe you're on the right path. You're convinced you're doing exactly what you should be doing. And that's why it's so much more dangerous. You can resist what attacks you. You can't resist what you believe is good. You can fight what threatens you. You won't fight what you think is God. Persecution strengthens faith because it tests faith. It puts faith under pressure and proves what's real. Deception replaces faith. It substitutes a counterfeit so convincing that you don't realize the original is gone. And here's what makes this so terrifying. And this is the core danger we've been building toward. A persecuted believer knows they need to stand firm. A deceived believer doesn't know they need anything. They think they're already standing. They think they're already right. They think they're already on God's side. And while they're congratulating themselves on their faithfulness, they're actually serving the enemy. That's why Jesus started with deception. Because deception, if it succeeds, neutralizes every other warning. The deceived believer won't resist the Antichrist. They'll worship him thinking he's Christ. The deceived believer won't refuse the mark. They'll accept it, thinking it's God's provision. The deceived believer won't endure persecution. They'll be on the side doing the persecuting, convinced they're serving God. Deception doesn't just lead people astray. It convinces them they're on the right path while they walk toward destruction. That's why it's the greatest danger. And that's why Jesus commanded what he commanded next.